let's we can kick off the session with a reading. So I've chosen a reading from the that Bodhicharya Avatara by Shantideva because I think it encapsulates the spirit of what we're doing. You know, we're eco-sattvas in training. I think it does really well. It sums that up really, really well. So I'll just read something from the Bodhicharya Avatara, and you may just want to sit quietly, close your eyes, and just reflect on this verse. With the good acquired by doing all this, may I allay the suffering of every living being. May I be medicine for the sick. May I be both their doctor and their nurse until the sickness does not recur. May I avert the pain of hunger and thirst with showers of food and drink in the eons of famine. May I be the protector of the unprotected and the caravan leader for travellers. May I be the boat, the causeway and the bridge for those who long to reach the further shore. May I be a light for those in need of light. May I be a bed for those in need of rest. May I be a servant for those in need of service, for all embodied beings. Just as the earth and other elements are serviceable in many ways to the immeasurable beings dwelling throughout space, so may I be sustenance of many kinds for the realm of beings throughout space until all have attained release. So, once again, very warm welcome to this session, the introduction into the Triratna Earth Sangha. So what we're going to do is that Tejapala and I are going to talk about the Earth Sangha. We're going to put it in context for you. So I'll be talking a little bit about the Earth Sangha, if you like, in theory, and then Tejapala will go on to talk about it a little bit more in practical terms. And so, in other words, what it might actually look like as we go forward in practice. Yeah. So I will start. I will launch this. So the Triratna Earth Sangha. So I'm going to talk about it from three points of view, which you could call their kind of personal, the sort of the social stroke Sangha, and the wider world. I'm just going to set my timer. Okay, so why we need the Earth Sangha from these different points of view. So the social. So, well, the Sangha is an assembly. It's a coming together of people in the spiritual community for the purpose of practice. And let's face it, I mean, what we're dealing with here, the issues that we are looking at are existential. Yeah, it's scary stuff that we're dealing with here. We're coming together and looking kind of straight into the sun, as it were. We're looking at the possibility of climate breakdown. We're looking at global climate emergency and so forth, and all of the implications of that. So one of the reasons why we want or need a Sangha is to come together so that we can support one another in the face of this, sort of provide somewhere to go, someone to talk to provide solace, yeah, to give us a context in which we can come together, in which we can exchange our concerns and exchange our inspirations going forward. So that's a very important aspect of Sangha, is the personal. So yeah, so we can follow each other's examples of good practice, good ecological practice. We can inspire and support and gladden one another, and we can commiserate and share our grief if need be. So they're on a purely personal level. Now, on the level of our Sanghas, I think it's also important for us to have an organization like this so that we can talk to each other in our movement. Now, I think in many ways the movement has a problem talking to itself about the climate and ecological emergency, certainly from my own small corner of the movement. It's not as if people are indifferent or in denial or skeptical particularly. It's more as if a slightly pained and wary look might arise on somebody's face when you start talking about it. So as if the subject is the kind of embarrassing relative at a party or the elephant in the room that you know is there but don't really want to acknowledge. Now, there may be all sorts of reasons for this. It might just be that people want to have the practice of Buddhism as a sort of private kind of therapeutic space, which is a perfectly legitimate thing to want. And they don't really want to let kind of existential issues into that space, which, you know, I completely get. Yeah. Or we're just not practiced in that discourse. You know, either way, there are reasons why people don't want to. People may be unwilling, may be reluctant to engage with the issue. I'm just going to change my headphones. If you'll bear with me, sorry.
I'm just enjoying watching the typos in the subtitles at the moment. Thinking "bear with me" turned up as "big bear with me," and my name turned up as "tattoo parlor." So,
sorry, I had an inconvenient battery low warning, so I needed to stop. So that's knocked me out of my stride somewhat. But oh yes, how the movement talks to itself. So we need to be able to address our own questions about climate, and we need to be able to address the questions that other people in our movement may have about climate. You know, people may have genuine and heartfelt questions about the relevance of the whole discussion and the whole issue to the Dharma and vice versa. And I think we need to be able to address those questions in our centres, in our institutions. We need to be able to go to people's doubts, and we need to be able to resolve our own and talk about the issues which arise for us. We need to make sure that we have, you know, teachings at our fingertips, that we have a body of knowledge that we can call on, which is reliably and assuredly Dharmic. So that's another aspect. And then our relationship with the world. So as well as just being inward-facing and dealing with true Bhakti folk, we also need to be turning to the outside world and using our influence, our specific Buddhist virtues and practices to bring an influence to bear on the world of climate activism, for instance. So our particular focus of mindfulness, our ethics, we need to be able to bring those to bear, I think, on the climate activist movement. You know, which I've been involved in Extinction Rebellion myself, and I've seen at times how non-violence of body is certainly practiced, but there may be a less than full understanding of the principles of non-violence of speech and thought. So we have a unique and distinctive contribution to make to climate activism in the world, in broader society. So those are the three areas that I wanted to highlight. And at this point, I think I'm handing over back to Tejapala to sort of go into a little bit more detail.
Yeah, thank you. So that list of three spheres of influence, the personal, the Sangha, and the societal, those are actually, there's been a group of us meeting for several months now, about once every 2 weeks. And one of the things we've been doing is organising this conference. I haven't been a key person involved in that, but there have been some others who have. And I just want to say, she's just joined us. Thank you to Angela Lombardy in Glasgow, who has been nothing short of heroic. But we've been getting together, and one of the things we've done is drawn up what we think the aims should be of a Buddhist movement within a movement working on the climate crisis and the ecological crisis more generally. But what does that look like in practical terms? Well, I've got some suggestions about what we might do in each of those spheres of influence. The personal sphere is actually the one that I find the hardest to work out what we should do. I think I've just got to be confirmed against that. But in the Sangha and societal sphere, I think I've got a little bit more clarity. In the sphere of the Sangha, I think one of the things we can do is simply have conversations with one another. It doesn't sound like much, but it can be a useful starting point. The most common pattern when it comes to communication about the climate around the world is non-communication. I know that might seem strange for those of us who do it all the time, and I work as a climate activist, so I feel like I talk about it non-stop, but that is still the most common pattern. It's just the subject doesn't come up, mostly because people feel awkward about talking about it. And I suspect we're better than most in our movement, but I suspect we're not that much better than most. There's a whole other area I think I'd like us to work on, which is whatever we do in the world of climate engagement, I'd like it to be, I'm hoping that we can keep it very strongly grounded in Dharma practice, in Bente's system of practice. And there's a few ways I think we can do that. And you might say, well, it's obvious if just doing something about the climate is, you know, an application of the first precept. Yes, it's true. But at the same time, I know from experience that it's very easy to lose sight of my state of mind. I'm having sat down with a government minister in the front and the executive row of a executive team of a major coal mining company. I know exactly how easy it is to lose track of my mental states and get into states of anger. So I think the first thing we can do is, I'd love it if some order members would get interested in collating the resources that we've already got in our Sangha when it comes to engagement in the climate. There's actually been quite a number of great talks that have been put up on Free Buddhist Audio. There's been retreat materials designed. There's been all sorts of things that people have made. It'd be good to just get those all in one place and put them in one place on the Buddhist Center or online. That would be a really good start. And I think also this is a relatively new area for our Sangha, and it would be good for those of us who are more or less directly involved to make sure we're in communication with other members of the order to make sure that what we're doing is in fact grounded in our system of practice, and that we don't lose sight of that. So that's number one. And number two is the Sustainable Buddhist Center Certification Scheme. I know some of you would have heard of that, others may not have. It's a really very useful practical thing that we can do to make our centers and our other businesses, etc., just in line with our own values. It's not radically changing the world, but it's very, very good in terms of good basic practice and well worth it. And then in terms of the societal sphere, I think we can think in terms of, first of all, teaching meditation to climate activists. I know personally a number of very stressed out climate activists, the professional ones, as well as the people who are at the grassroots and just volunteering. There's a lot of pretty stressed out people out there for very understandable reasons. And I think a number of them would welcome, and I've actually been approached by people in Extinction Rebellion, people saying, can you teach meditation? So I think there's a well worth it doing that. The second thing I'd like to suggest is supporting protest actions or other actions which are either multi-faith or Buddhist. So there are, for example, I know Extinction Rebellion has got quite a number of activities, particularly in the UK part of Extinction Rebellion, where meditation is involved. There's a particular group that's a Buddhist climate action group called Dance in the UK. I can't remember what it stands for. Someone else can remind me, but it's people who do things like go and hold a meditation protest outside of Barclays Bank. Really worth it. And then finally, there's a network that I'm involved in called Green Faith International, which is multi-faith. And we are holding a multi-faith global day of action on the 17th, there's actually 2 days, the 17th and 18th of October, called Faiths for Climate Justice. And we will be putting up banners outside various places of worship, calling for bold climate action, and also holding faith-based or multi-faith protests outside of key targets in Australia. That's going to be federal members of parliament. In the UK, I believe there's going to be people doing that outside Barclays Bank branches in various parts of the country. And I'll get onto, I think I'll come back to that a bit more later on, when we get to the getting started section. But yeah, please do consider getting involved in one or another of those forms of action. And thanks for putting that in the chat, Akasha Raja. I think I should just say, my experience has told me that when people who are seen by the public as being religious, inverted commas, in some sense, get involved in some sort of public climate action, we have far more impact than most people could with a very small number of people, even at a small, something like, say, 10 people holding signs and meditating in protest outside of Barclays Bank will almost certainly get good social media. 100 of them will possibly get media attention. You could not get the same effect with the same number of people just because who were not visibly there as what we call a person of faith. It just has more effect. I know from when, and particularly if it's arrestable, I know from when I've been arrested at the Adani coal mine, with just 5 of us did that, when with a church minister and me and another member of our order, Arya Dharma, and a couple of others. But even just normal protests, we're so much more visible, we're so much more listened to in the public debate. So it's really worth it. Often people feel like they can say, what can I do? I'm not sure what I can do. I think as Buddhists, we can do a lot. We can do a lot more than we usually think. I'm going to hand back to you, Akasha Raja. I think, or does it go on to me next? No, it's me. So what we're going to suggest, I'm going to suggest that we do is try and build up a network of people who are willing to be reps at our own centres or in our Sangha, whatever form that may take, Buddha field, whatever it may be, to be part of this Triratna Earth Sangha. And your particular local Sangha, you may decide that you get involved in one of those areas. It may be the Sangha sphere of influence. You might just be all about getting your centre certified as a sustainable Buddhist centre. Or people may say, well, I just want to get behind that Global Day of Action and then see what happens. So I'm going to suggest if that we would be really good if we can, if you can get others involved at your centre. We will be having a meeting of centre reps soon if you want to sign up, and we'll be signing that up in a second. But the first thing that I want you to bear in mind is don't worry if you feel like, oh my goodness, I'm going to be the only one doing it. I talk to people from different faith communities all the time, and pretty much uniformly, if I say, can you put your hand up if you feel like you're the only one in your faith community who gets it? Every single time, hands go up. But then I say, can you think of 1 or 2 others who actually really care about this? And usually there are. So the trick is to find even just one other person who's willing to make things happen with you. And then that 1 or 2 people, the next trick is to go, okay, can we get 3, 4, 5 other people who won't be central to it, but who will take on some responsibility? It's just old-fashioned organizing principles, and it works. And we'll be talking more about that when we have the first meeting of centre reps. So back to you, Akasha Raja.
Yeah, thanks, Tejapala. So to the practicalities of doing this, we have arranged to have 2 meetings on Sunday, the 10th of October, to take into account the time zones that people are operating in. So for some people, those meetings would actually be early the following morning, depending on which session you join. So this is all UK time. So, and Tejapala is going to put a form in the chat, and the times broken down by a time zone. I'll come back to the form in a second. Yeah. So we'll have 1 meeting, the first meeting of reps, and I need to stress it's for people who say, yeah, I'd like to do that. And also those of you who just want to find out more and don't yet feel like you want to sign on the dotted line, that's also fine. You're also more than welcome just to come and scope it out and see how you feel. So the first of those meetings on Sunday, the 10th of October, will be at 9:30 UK time, and all of the different time zones will go in the chat, so I won't run through those now for the sake of brevity.
Could I just point out, it's worth pointing out that because most people here from the UK probably, both times suit people in the UK. There's 9:30 in the morning and 6 o'clock in the evening. Yes,
so I was just going, so there is an evening meeting, thanks Tejapala, there is an evening meeting too, well, in UK time. So that you can come at 9:30 AM UK time, or again at 6 PM UK time. And again, those time zones will be in the chat. And also in the chat, I hope, is a form that you can use to register for this meeting on the 10th. And again, the details of those 2 different meetings are there. So you can, it's all the normal details, of course. And we're asking you to say kind of who you are within Triratna. So we're asking people to say whether they're order members, Mitras in training for ordination, Mitras or friends who have been in regular contact with Triratna for more than for at least 6 months. So we want people who are kind of reasonably well established in Triratna in terms of its sort of practices and general ethos. If you're really new and you're dead keen, then please just, you can sort of message us and I'm sure we can kind of work our way around that. But in principle, we'd like people who are well-founded, well-grounded in Triratna to be involved in this in the first instance.
And that form is in the chat now.
And the form is now in the chat, so hopefully it's editable. Yeah, you might want to check that. So open that link and then sort of and check that it is indeed editable. I'm pretty sure it is. So it gives you all the normal stuff and tick box options for which meeting to go to and what you are in Triratna, if you like. I'm trying to find words that aren't words like status or situation, but nothing's going to. Yeah, so who you are within Triratna. And that will then come through to us and we'll be able to organise the meetings accordingly. Yeah, I think that's me done in this particular section. So with that, I'll hand back to Tejapala, who will talk about getting started.
Great, thanks. And we're running a bit early, so we might have a bit more time, Kasharaja, for questions when we get to that in a second. So I'm going to suggest that those who want to can get started, and this will come up if you come to that first Centre Reps meeting, or you just want to kick the tires and find out more. I think we should get started by getting involved in this Global Day of Action on the 17th and 18th of October. And just to give you an idea of what's happening in different parts of the world, in the UK, for most of the UK, it's just a matter of finding a group of people who want to do this and go to your local Barclays Bank branch. Did I mention Barclays already? And find a way of sitting in meditation, holding some signs that say that they need to get out of fossil fuel investment, get someone to take a photo of it, and there'll be instructions on the website, which should be going into the chat soon, for where you put those photos, put them on social media. There's a whole kit for getting involved. Come to the meeting and find out more. If you're in London, there's going to be an action outside of the Houses of Parliament. If you want to find out more about that, is that in the chat yet, Akasha Raja, that section?
I think it's all gone into the chat.
Okay. So there's an email address to find out more about that, which is mobilise@faithfortheclimate.org.uk. Yep. And that's on Monday, the 18th of October. There's two things happening at the Houses of Parliament that day. One of them is a multi-faith gathering, and that's where you'd be coming to. And the other one, I happen to know that the plan, at least, is to project a big climate message onto the UK Houses of Parliament. Now, obviously, I don't tend to say that, put that in writing, because technically that's illegal, but that will be happening as well. In other parts of the world, in Australia, there will be people doing protests outside of multi-faith vigils. In fact, outside of federal members of Parliament's offices. My email address is in the chat if you want to know more. And if you're anywhere else in the world, there will be plenty of things going on. There's a lot in many different countries. Have a look on the world map, which is in the chat, and find out more, or simply email me, and my email address is in there as well. So just, if you want to get involved, you can get involved. At the moment, there's about 200 actions around the world that have been registered. And I think there are going to be, I'm imagining we're going to finish on about 300 by the time we get to the day itself. So I hope that is relatively self-explanatory. I know there's a lot going into the chat. Perhaps we can, I think we're going to have a follow-up email from this, but it might not be for a week or so after this conference. So if you want the information now, do save the chat at the end, or copy and paste the relevant bits, or ask questions. And we've got a chance now to ask questions. if you want to, I mean, there's 60 people here. I think probably the best way to do it is to put your question in the chat, and then either Akash or I will answer it as best we can. I've got a question here about the Barclays action. Oh, it's actually, what's happening is it's more something that you would need to initiate yourself and hold and get a few other people and get together and hold a meditation protest outside of a Barclays bank. But Akash or Rajan, maybe you could provide some information about where you would get useful information about what's been done already, why Barclays Bank is worth bothering with, so people know what they're saying when they get there.
Oh, that's a good question. I know a small group of centres is currently planning activities, and Angela's helpfully posted those. So Shrewsbury, Sheffield, Glasgow, and Brighton to date. I'm afraid I don't know what the central point of contact would be, but I've put my email in the chat previously. So if it might just be easiest if you just ask me, just send me a message. I mean, just for interest, we are going to be incorporating a ritual aspect into our protest. It's not just going to be meditation, but there's going to be a whole ritual element to it as well, which I know that Shanti Garba test ran very, very successfully in London during the Extinction Rebellion protest. So I'll be very happy to share that with anybody who's interested. Why Barclays? Okay. Well, Barclays is one of the worst offending banks in terms of its financial support for the dirtiest of fossil fuel projects. I think it scores something like 4 out of 100 in terms of its kind of corporate ethics when compared to other banks. So right up at the top of the list, unsurprisingly, are banks like Triodos, which ranks about 92 out of 100. So I'm not exactly sure how they arrive at that weighting, but it's definitely going to include things like support, you know, pouring billions and billions of pounds into financing things like tar sands projects, for instance. So Barclays, I'm afraid, is one of the big villains of the piece. But it's not as if the others are covering themselves in glory either. But it's just, you know, some centres and some groups may well choose to rotate around the banks. And HSBC, I think, is pretty awful as well. So it's not just Barclays. I might you, David's posted something interesting. It's the biggest, the largest provider of money to fossil fuel projects in Europe. And there's a link to a Guardian article about that. So that's kind of why Barclays.
I've just put something in the chat, which unfortunately didn't come up as a live link, but for general information about that day of action and how you get involved, it's faithsforclimatejustice.org. That's faiths within the numeral 4, climatejustice.org, and you'll see everything there, including a world map of where these actions are taking place. You should be able to look up where other actions are that are near you if you want to get involved, and all the information about how you get involved, the kits you can download for how you make your action effective on social media, or if you want to contact the local media, etc.
Okay, so Christine from Wales has just raised a very good point that as a trainer for XR, that protesters do go on some sort of actions prior to taking part in protests. And meditation could, of course, be one of those. And she's saying, of course, that we'll have some people from XR Buddhists who will no doubt provide more information about this tomorrow.
I'm wondering what the best use of time and energy, the merits of joining up on existing initiatives as the merits of setting up something new. Okay, so in general, I get asked this one a fair bit. There is, in terms of climate activism or activism of any kind, there's a general distinction between what you might call strategy, which is the big things you're trying to change, and tactics, which is the clever things you do to make that change happen. Generally speaking, large climate organizations or movements like XR or Green Faith International or others have thought about the strategy, and they've thought about it long and hard. And what we can do is help with some of the tactics. I strongly suspect that unless you've thought about the strategy really hard, like what is actually going to add up to the change that we want to see, and you've got the scale of a number of other people to work with, that it's really hard to do something by ourselves, as say Triratna I think we're much better off putting our energy behind something that is existing. I've got something there. Have people already started any projects offering meditation for activist scientists that we can get on board with? I know there's someone involved in this conference who's involved with Extinction Rebellion Buddhists, and so they're almost certainly heavily involved. And there's quite a strong crossover in the UK, isn't there, Kasharaja, between Extinction Rebellion and meditation teaching?
There is all of the events I've been to, meditation teaching is part of the regenerative aspects. So there's always been, and I myself have taught the Metta Bhavana outside the Royal Courts of Justice on a pink boat. So there is precedent, yes.
In other parts of the world, it's not as developed. I mean, even within Extinction Rebellion, I know people in XR in Australia, and they're not as far ahead in that sort of regenerative work that they do. So I think if you're UK based, then again, I think the best thing to do is, in the first instance, email Akasha Raja, and I'm sure he'll be able to put you in touch with someone else in our Sangha who would be well placed to talk about that. In other parts of the world, I'm not so sure. I think it's a matter of trying to find other people in your Sangha and then working out who you talk to. I'm sorry to be a bit, but it's probably the reality.
You can always contact the XR groups operating in your region.
I'm sure it'll be well received.
Yeah, offer it to them, as a centre, as a subgroup, as a region. I'm sure, I can't imagine it would be turned down.
No, and the need is big.
Yeah.
Shall we? Thanks for posting the link there, Angela, to the Faiths for Climate. So perhaps we should go into the breakout groups now.
Yep. Okay. So we're going to ask you just to, well, obviously in a way it's you can talk about whatever you like, but we've got a couple of questions that we can suggest to you. A couple of questions. So the first question, and I'll take I'll put these in the chat, is out of the things that we've mentioned today, what do you feel enthusiastic about? Yeah, so working within your Sangha, yeah, awareness raising, talking to people in your Sangha about climate, whatever the Sustainable Buddhist Scheme, etc. And finding out who else in your Sangha might be interested and what do you think they might be enthusiastic about if you were to ask them. So again, capacity building, I suppose, if you like, really. So those are two questions that we thought you could consider, but obviously it's up to you what you talk about. But we're going to endeavour to divide you up roughly by region. So Johnny will create breakout rooms that you can join. So rather than assigning, I think that's right, is it, Johnny?
Yep, that's right. Good to go.
So we're good to go. So just pick the group that best corresponds to your kind of geographical / linguistic situation. Yeah, and we'll have 10 minutes?
So welcome back. I think we've got everybody back. We're meant to finish at 10:02, the hour. So I'm hoping just to give a final plug. I hope the conversation went well. If you have questions or misgivings, please email me. It's just Tejopala, as you can see my name there, @gmail.com, or my work email address, which I also put in the chat. So Kasharaja, could you put the sign up form in the chat maybe one more time?
Yeah.
We're really hoping that people will not just come to a conference, but get involved. I think that's the thing that will really turn this conference into a success. So even if you're just thinking about it and you're not very sure about how much you want to get involved or what it's like, just come along, kick the tires, find out more. So just open that link up. You can fill it out after the session's over. It'll be open on your browser.
Yeah.
Really appreciate everyone coming. It's amazing to have this. When I was first getting involved in Triratna, back when it was called the FWBO, I wish we'd had a whole international conference on climate and ecological action. I really do. And so sadhu for turning up, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, very many thanks indeed. And do come enjoy the rest of the conference, and do come and see us on the 10th of October. And you're not signing your name away, you're not signing your life away, just come and scope it out and see how you feel. And let's hope we all meet again in prosperity and boom.